Imagine telling the doomsayers of the Final Fantasy XIII Dark Ages that we would get a knockout mainline title in 2020 and that it would be Final Fantasy VII. Though I've always had a nagging curiosity, I've never played a single Final Fantasy game. That'll change with the golden opportunity to play a modern remake of the 5th generation's debatable GOAT. But that debate and why everyone who doesn't give that nod to Goemon's greatest adventure is wrong isn't why we're here today. After plunging 50 hours deep into the 7 Remake, I'll be ranking its bosses in a detailed 3-parter on both their difficulty and quality. This blended, evolving format I'm testing strives to downplay time spent justifying why I placed a boss in a particular spot on a list, and instead emphasize the individual merit and challenge of each encounter. I'll still be giving grades to each boss on the following scale, creating an overarching master list as we progress in order of appearance. This is going to allow my commentary to fluctuate wildly from battle to battle, and a way for those avoiding spoilers to watch as they play the game themselves. To that end, I'd like to thank Square Enix for providing me a review copy. I'll be avoiding all story elements beyond each boss and save the majority of my game-related praise and critiques for a video essay to come. As for traditional rankings, I'll keep those alive through you. Check the description for a link to the community survey for boss difficulty, and leave a comment below on any boss you like for a chance to be featured in the video to come. I'll post the survey in each part and keep it live for 2 weeks to give you time to vote. With all of that said, let's get started with the boss ranking for the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Number 1, Scorpion Sentinel. Everything leading up to this point is a slow tutorial drip that introduces you to 7R's hybrid combat. Square found a brilliant way to blend the turn-based heart of the original with a real-time bombastic battle. Breaking it down, each character has a string of light attacks by pressing square and a heavy attack by holding it. These attacks build the ATB meter, in layman's terms a meter with 2 full charges that you consume to perform individual actions. This can be a special attack, magic spell, or item use, a simple breakdown that becomes more complex when you add in the ability to swap between characters on the fly, pull up the menu to slow time and queue commands, each character's special triangle button technique that can only be used under player control, different weapons and builds offering more abilities, choosing whether to block or evade their assaults, and balancing all of this into a real-time strategy against your foe. Shifting gears toward the bosses, it's worth mentioning the primary style they fall into. I often throw around the words endurance battle to describe lengthy battles of attrition that deplete resources to varying degrees based on margin for error. Nearly every boss in this game falls into this category because the game asks you to balance your ATB between offense and healing. In contrast, bosses offer a gradual reward for proper strategy over time through a stagger meter, a meter that builds in various ways from enemy to enemy, most effectively through breaking body parts or using an elemental weakness. This can put them under pressure, causing the meter to grow more rapidly until they're staggered. At this point, they sit there vulnerable while taking 160% bonus damage, a percentage that can be amplified through certain abilities. Building this meter effectively while balancing your resources through strategic offense and defense is the key to 7R's combat. Forgive me for the lengthy exposition, but it's important to share understanding of the base mechanics at play in every battle. Personally, I found it difficult to wrap my head around even a quarter of this in the opening hour, so my opinion on the Scorpion Sentinel is weighted heavily toward how effectively it works as a teaching opportunity while still offering an engaging battle. Starting with the former, it is an effective teaching tool. The aggressive use of difficult-to-dodge rockets encourages you to block what you can't evade. The electric self AoEs punish you for overly aggressive attack spam. The shift to the wall is a nudge to swap to Barret and queue up magic from Cloud. The shield in the second phase that is dismantled through a backside weak point, further hinting to swap between characters to get a crack at the booty. There's the Omega laser bit that has you hide behind obvious cover to note how key positioning can be for certain high damage moves. Even the finale with you breaking body parts to stop itself heals helps you learn. This is all accompanied by dialogue from the characters that makes these things even clearer in the moment. And it is all clear as day in hindsight, but my first time through felt more oppressive. Instead of being able to appreciate the way these mechanics encourage desired responses, the procedural nature felt restrictive, frustrating, and even somewhat dull at times. You're given plenty of healing to offset mistakes, suppressing difficulty. The story beat of being a barrier to escaping the reactor adds tension, and the arena's clever design allows you to position widely without exploiting the boss thanks to its ranged abilities. I do appreciate the emphasis on strategy, but your options are so limited in the early game, it doesn't allow the player much creative license. This becomes glaring in a battle that lasts for ages in the face of an ocean-sized health pool. I'll give it a grade of C for its quality, and an offensive rating that credits its teaching value but less than exciting execution. As for difficulty, I give it a D thanks to its forgiveness in allowing heavy healing and simple mechanics on repeat runs. Number 2, Roshan the bike. For a section that deviates so far from the standard gameplay loop, it was executed brilliantly. The build-up to fighting Roche is driven by story stakes of helping Jesse and your Avalanche comrades execute their plans in a safer way. Your barrier to that end is a speedy battle against a bunch of basic soldiers, ending with the grandiose introduction to Roche. The cinematics add great flair and never go on long enough to take away from the actual battle, which is spectacular. You can accelerate, brake, hit on each side, and use a big spinning slash or sword beam to hit him from far away. He'll do much of the same, fire off sword beams at both you and your allies in quick succession, vary his speeds to make it harder for you to hit him, and eventually call in some lightning strikes fast enough to be tricky to evade. The swift chess match of speed throttling from side to side to avoid his assaults is a genius way to handle dodging. Normally when these type of chase sequences are added to games, they're a hindrance, but the mechanics from both you and the boss are responsive and enjoyable. There's a beauty in the mechanical simplicity and an electrifying edge in its execution. While it's handily an F-tier cakewalk in terms of difficulty, I give this thrill ride an A for its quality. Number 3, Roshan a Duel. Personality goes a long way, and Roche uses a delightful mania to antagonize you. For as much as he wants to defeat you, he's just as concerned with making the duel an amusing tango. This is exhibited by him fully restoring your health and MP before the battle, a nice reprieve since there's huge waves of basic enemies leading up to it. The scraps left behind even make a mob for you to brawl in the center of as a spectacle. Mechanically, Roche is one basic boy. There's loads of downtime between his light combos and lengthy thrusting, leaving a large window for you to give some focus thrusts of your own. His weakness to fire was lucky happenstance since I happened to have it equipped going in, which was a huge help in roasting him. Timing your evasion encounters isn't too tough, but there is a tinge of risk in dodging his delayed windups with a quick follow-through. There's also intensity added in the mono-e-mono nature because you can't rely on diverted attention and an ally farming ATB to heal you. This is remedied by the aforementioned generous downtime, providing a fair opportunity to build ATB on your own. The difficulty is great for its place in the game, with satisfying story context at the apex of a long brawl, has interesting yet simple mechanics that are compelling in tandem with his personality, but are not overwhelming. Plenty of quality worthy of a B grade, with perhaps too much simplicity to stretch to the A mark. A lack of complexity that leads to a well-earned D for difficulty. Number 4, Enigmatic Spector. A wonderful chapter of bosses is capped off by this boring blanket. This hooded phantom loafs around while you deal with hordes of lesser specters. Their only offense is smashing into the ground and shooting a small wave of spikes at you. It's very easy to dodge, does little damage if you don't dodge it, and their health is closer to priceless yet delicate tissue paper rather than unbreakable steel. The Enigma, on the other hand, is one girthy lavender ghoulie. This is all about building stagger and unloading the brunt of your offense once you reach it. Thankfully, Tifa, the fist-throttling master of blasting bosses stagger, is here to help. Her unbridled strength buff makes her punches pack a bit more heat, can be used twice to double the trouble, and gives her access to the devastating rise and fall and omni-strike abilities. Though they deplete her buff, they unload massive damage. The true benefit is their ability to amplify the stagger damage bonus. There are a few moves in the game that can do this, so she is invaluable. Of course, I didn't have any idea about that in my first playthrough, so instead I slapped the Spectre until it died. It will float around shooting magic rays at you, creating an explosive black hole, and bounding one of your allies, locking their movement. It's pretty passive though, and the basic mobs give you the ability to farm ATB, which is more than enough to stay healthy and offensively potent. It's mechanically dull, but I do like the story's significance and staging of the battle. Because of this, the mediocrity isn't quite worthless, garnering a D for quality. As for difficulty, I'll go with a D as well, since it's at least tanky enough in a group to provide some modicum of challenge. Number 5, the Crab Warden. I have to admit, part of what I valued in Roche's fight over bosses like the Spectre and Scorpion was its one-on-one nature. That isn't sustainable whatsoever, and I fell in love with party management, but I was really struggling to queue everything up early on. I relied too heavily on swapping and using the quick mapped abilities instead of using the menu to command actions. That's a big mistake since the menu slows down time to a snail's pace, allowing you to carefully time your next move. In reference to the Crab Warden himself, I struggled to read his attacks despite the red labeled names due to getting my fingers crossed trying to manage everything in real time. Totally my fault, but it did amplify the chaos. At least your goal is clear. Break the 4 legs to boost the stagger meter so it'll open its shielded weak point for a massive damage opportunity. Afterward, it shifts and calls in minor reinforcements. A solid distraction that allows for ATB farming, rinse and repeat until it pulls out auxiliary weapons for its final phase. Its attacks vary from a big charge to spins, tosses, tossing bombs in a circular radius, a flame burst shooting forward, shooting the aforementioned auxiliary weapons in the later phase, and also calling in huge lines of electricity. It's all well telegraphed, but it does get lost a bit in my own mismanagement of the combat. It doesn't really matter because you can smack it enough to get healed, which is far easier with 3 party members. While I will take personal blame for my poor combat management, what really grinds me is how bland it is. There's no driving motivation other than this big robot is in our way, something they already used for the Scorpion. It has no personality or stakes other than being a blockade. And like the Scorpion, the fight outstays its welcome a little bit. The mechanics are decent enough though to earn a passable C in quality, but the difficulty is still middling at best for these big robots in a way that I can't help but give it the D. Number 6, the Airbuster. If you've been waiting for a boss to bust its way up the difficulty charts, then you're in luck. Incidentally, you can control the difficulty to a degree through deactivating parts of its arsenal through limited keycards before the battle, including big bombs and stun lasers. You can also opt to forego that for bonus items, which I did thinking it'd be some rare reward. Sadly, no dice, but you do at least get the elemental materia, a rare and valuable item that you can equip to your weapon to add elemental damage, or to your armor to decrease, nullify, or even absorb it. You'll definitely want Barret equipped with thunder elemental attacks, as he'll be the biggest factor on the squad for this fight. At the start, you're split into Barret and Tifa on one side with Cloud on the other through clever arena design and boss placement. Swapping back and forth between allies is key to split its attention, while the unfocused side can deal damage to build ATB and heal the ones taking aggro. After enough damage, it backs off, letting you reunite, but the actual union should wait a moment as it charges up the massive Tank Buster beam. I'm a bit miffed by this attack because it was so close to being staggered and yet tanked and blasted me away. Alternatively, you could just not be an impatient doofus and easily evade by standing aside, then getting the punish when it's safe. Afterward, you'll get slapped by hands with a mind of their own. Breaking them down builds more stagger, but their erratic patterns dealt hefty blows to my team. Even so, I was loving this fight. The party divide, excellent and fair tells, getting to clap back at those hands with my own 1-2 punch, it was awesome. Then the automaton took flight, said sayonara to Cloud and Tifa's usefulness, and made it the Barret show. Alright, let me make this clear. Look, I love Barret. I am always down to pump bosses full of lead and bravado, but not at the cost of making my other 2 party members arena decorations. Ornaments that get stunned endlessly, then big bombered until you're stuck in a round of healing hot potato relying on Barret to farm ATB. The Airbuster does periodically swoop down, but not nearly enough to justify the design of having it hang out midair when 2 of your combatants are primarily melee based. They can use magic, particularly Cloud being more balanced, and I'll take blame for not using it more liberally. But I still think it was balanced in an unfavorable way. That and getting stunned is quite annoying, but I suppose I also have myself to blame for that one too, since I prioritize loot in the keycard section. Even if my strategy was the real failure, I'll stay true to my experience here, one that warrants a B grade for the great lead-in, excellent first and second phase, but is capped by a craptastic finale. Enough to amplify the difficulty for the Airbuster up to a B as well. Number 7, Reno. Stuns, stuns, and more stuns. This fight in a nutshell. As much as I dislike getting locked into place for a single error, I can't deny that every bit of this duel with an anime rockstar wannabe is fair. At the outset, he'll just dodge everything you dish out. In return, he'll do some close-up flurries, counter if you attack carelessly with a similar smackdown, fire an EMP blast with a big tail, and he'll do a dashing thrust, first long, then short. Careful evasion and patience leads to him being pressured, which is your time to unload, or you can use magic and abilities at key moments to put him off balance faster. The first half is easy peasy. It has very clearly defined mechanics and helps you ease into the complexities to come. My only minor gripe is that the second phase intro made him invulnerable briefly. Most bosses do this shift suddenly without warning, which can be a cheap way to undermine hefty attacks if you unleash them unknowingly at the wrong moment. The second phase is more difficult in some ways, but forgiving in others. At the start, he'll summon tracking EMP mines. On one hand, they're helpful to build ATB, which can be useful to farm to use magic and lay the pressure on. On the other hand, they divert your attention enough to create openings for him, and it felt like he deferred much more to their usage in this phase, even grabbing one like a whip and tossing it at you. If at any point you do get stunned, he will immediately capitalize. This cycle of stun failure made me panic in the latter half and perform far worse. That said, his mechanics are still well balanced, even a little bit in your favor. I do really like the concept of needing to strategically time when you attack or be punished for your greed. With these rules clearly defined, a killer setup with a beautiful change of scenery and motivation to protect Aerith, this is an easy A for quality. Though I'd give him D marks in difficulty, especially for anyone who knows what Counterbalance does to him on a second playthrough. Number 8, Rude. Of the 3 human bosses so far, Rude is handily my least favorite. This is partially because a partner makes a world of difference against foes that can only focus on one spot at a time, especially with Aerith spamming ranged magic and heals while you play the distraction. I'd also say Rude's mechanics are the least demanding. He'll tackle you with the ferocity of a teddy bear. He'll counter your hits if you attack too long with a similarly weak haymaker. This passive phase is short, however, shifting to a lot of blocking and ranged shockwaves. With his focus on range in the second phase, it's extremely easy to take aggro with Cloud, then hit him while he's distracted with his weakness to wind. Slapping an elemental wind on Aerith's basic shots allows you to let her mindlessly whittle him down from afar. The only thing to be wary of is being too greedy with melee since he counters, but Aerith can easily heal any lapses in your judgment. Though it seems he's designed as a difficult to attack through wall with his blocking and moves to keep you at a distance, Aerith nullifies any advantage he has, giving him an F in difficulty and a D in quality. Solely on the basis I think F should be reserved for bosses that have completely broken design, and there is at least some narrative value here. Number 9, Shiva. Our first summon battle takes place in the virtual world where you fight for her loyalty. She scoots around the arena firing ice shots, Blazega blasts, and uses a self AoE ice slam, plus a big finisher in Diamond Dust to annihilate your party. Using Fire Seam to put pressure on her, which leads to a stagger, at which point you can unload serious damage like any other boss. Don't forget the elemental materia as well, allowing fire to be in all of your attacks, or even better, reduce, nullify, or even absorb ice attacks. This makes her unable to harm you, which can seriously trivialize this battle. Assuming you face her early on, it's a bit tougher, but not by much. I gave her a D in difficulty on the basis that Diamond Dust can put you in a rough position, and her near constant movement can make it rough to nail her with Cloud. Her attacks are well defined enough, and it is neat taking on a summon, but I can't get excited enough about her battle to give it anything more than an average C grade. Number 10, Fat Chocobo. You want to talk about exciting summon battles, allow me to introduce you to this chonky chick. I know Chocobos are a mainstay of the franchise, but nobody told me they were pumping them with lard to enter the boss roster. What do I even say? This is incredible. In terms of adorable damage sponges, this is the GOAT. No real weaknesses, plenty of resists, and enough layers of fat to withstand loads of offense. While it soaks in your pathetic attempts at damage, it'll work, which is Chocobees for throwing crap at you, summon toy dolls that turn into nightmarish glass cannons, go boom, meaning flying up and slamming its omega booty to crush you from bone to soul, do a swallowing somersault, all leading to its most devastating attack.
Do a barrel roll!
Absurdity, thy name is Fat Chocobo. It looks like invisible hands are guiding a half-ton chicken rolling pin around the arena to flatten you at speeds nigh impossible for a creature of this girth. Though this all paints a stupid grin on my face throughout the fight, outside of a scare or two, this really is just unloading all of your best offense like a madman until you get a stagger, then making the most of that window to melt the bird. There's catharsis in what effectively is a punching bird for you to test your damage, and the silly nature brings me immense joy. Even though it is a cakewalk, the diverse range of attacks it offers can punish your greed if you fall asleep at the wheel. Not enough to earn it above an F for difficulty, but by God, this beautiful, bodacious bird is well worth the A in quality. Our final boss of the day is a perfect note to leave things hanging on until next time. Before getting to the battle itself, I want to say that I am a huge fan of arenas in games. If you have an enjoyable combat system, giving me a playground with rewards attached to throw down in is an instant win in my book. You're thrust into an arena as part of the story, and after claiming the championship, the seedy underbelly of Wall Market's desires forces you into one final battle. If you thought the obese poultry was over the top, allow me to introduce our final combatant of the day, a literal house. Maybe these absurdist designs are par for the course for series veterans, but I cannot possibly recreate the cartoonish jaw-drop quadruple take I did when this building stood before me as my competition. Not only is it the wackiest boss of the day, I have a feeling it will be the most divisive. The fundamental design beats of this fight are insanely dense, unforgiving, and make for one of the toughest battles in the entire game. The polarizing nature is based on whether you think the structural foundations of this demonic dormitory are good or bad. Before I tip my hat, let's lay the mechanics on the table. The color changing windows may seem festive, but they actually tip off what element the house is currently weak to. Red for fire, white for ice, green for wind, and blue for thunder. Pairing fire and ice, wind and thunder together gives you your path to stagger. Hit it with the opposite of each pair to maximize damage. This was utter chaos in my first playthrough, but my hard run of the game let me plan better. Giving Cloud Elemental Ice and Aerith Elemental Lightning on their attacks made a huge difference since it seemed to prefer fire and wind most of the time. As for its own attacks, you can look forward to it leaping around making you go the way of the Wicked Witch of the West, a charge to steamroll you, a literal concerto mixed in with missiles, or get nightmarishly sucked in for a little interior redecoration of your HP. I should also mention on hard you have to deal with these little tonberries, who might look like goobers with the speed of a tortoise, but those knives plunge your HP from full to zero in a one-hit KO. It adds a painful wrinkle, but at least the house can also hit them, and they aren't too tough to deal with as long as you're careful about your placement and manage your ATB well. Personally, I felt the moves are all well telegraphed, the duo supports each other well, and the magical design is a neat way to encourage strategy and deliberate attacks. Though it takes flight in the later part of the fight, it makes little difference since Aerith is the star of the show. I know I complained about the same thing for the Airbuster, but at least in this case it's only Cloud who's getting the shaft, and the majority of the fight takes place on the ground, so I really don't think it's a problem here. You need to focus on using Aerith anyway, thanks to God Mode, a barrier the house constantly erects that makes it nearly immune to physical attacks. Thankfully, Aerith's basic stream of shots count as magical damage. If you can hit it with the right elements after downing the shield, you'll get long windows to put the pressure on. The tricky thing is how readily it tosses the barrier up, sometimes causing you to waste resources. Of all the battles on today's list, this is the biggest poster child of the endurance battles I mentioned at the outset. If you don't effectively manage between its barrier, elemental shifts, and attacks, you can be stuck for a long time healing, reviving, or even failing altogether. Whether you think this is excellent design, somewhere in between, or complete garbage is subjective, but I can't deny how much I loved it. The house pulled me out of my hesitation to use magic in a creative way, the absurdity ups the ante on a rising crescendo of quality that the game was hitting during this chapter, and it only goes further as you become a fabulous honeybee dance god. It may not be a boss, but just like the bike sequences, the amount of impressive choreography blended with stylish QuickTime events offers enough flash to distract you from the inputs, making it even more captivating. The house embodies this sort of outrageous amusement with deep, challenging mechanics that put the limits of your skill ceiling to the test in a way few bosses in the game do. For the high entertainment value, challenge, and overall quality, I'm giving the house an S grade as a fantastic battle I won't soon forget. As for difficulty, I'm giving it the only A of the day. It's truly tough in a way that is intensified even further in hard mode. But of course, that's just my opinion. Hopefully it isn't too bothersome that I'm splitting this ranking into 3 parts, but this new style has me going into greater detail than I initially anticipated, and I'd like to keep these videos within the 20 to 30 minute range. Be sure to sound off in the comments with your own thoughts on the bosses of 7 Remake, and let me know what you think of the new format. Subscribe to stay tuned for part 2 and 3 coming soon, and the community survey for your input on a boss difficulty ranking. Until then, I want to thank you for watching today, much love to you, and I'll see you in the next video.